Hello everybody, Coach Larry coming at you live here from the pool this Sunday night. Hope you had a great weekend, and for all you swimmers out there, hope you are getting ready for your championship meets. Some of you are at those meets. In fact, some people were at those meets just this weekend. Others have big meets coming up in a couple of weeks, and then the big ones in March. So I know everybody's been working really hard since late August, maybe early September, putting the work in, putting the energy in. Here's my advice to you. Keep going. Don't worry. You've put in the work, you've put in the time, you've put in the energy. Now, just get sharp. Use your practices between now and your championship meet to get really sharp on those small things, those little skills, those fine details that win races. Remember, most of the time it's not what happens between the flags that wins races. It's what happens around the wall. It's what happens at the finish. It's what happens off the block. Those are those little things that make the biggest difference. So focus on those things in your practice. Attack your walls. Finish like you mean it. When you get the opportunity to go off the blocks, absolutely jump all over that opportunity. Okay? Awesome. All right. Hope you're all doing well on your goals and reviewing your goals on a daily basis. Remember, goals are not just for January 1st, New Year's resolution. They are a daily deal. They are living it out. They are meant to be read daily and discussed daily. So, live out your goals. You will encounter hurdles. When you do, jump them. Okay? Don't go have a pity party. Jump the hurdles. I promise, the more you jump your hurdles, the easier it will get to jump future hurdles. Okay? But the hurdles don't disappear. You just got to get better at jumping them. And you can do it. Okay? Awesome. All right, so we had a really good weekend this weekend. We had one new swimmer today. His name is Michael. Nice job, Michael. Shout out to you. We also had several other swimmers. We had Neely and Austin and Smiley Riley and Lucy and Thomas and Alex and Jessica. And tomorrow, President's Day, we have a full slate. So we got about 6 or 7 people coming in tomorrow for some one-to-one. So shout out to you guys. Way to put in the extra work. That individualized one-on-one attention can really help you hone in on those things that you can go work on at practice. So nice job, guys. Tonight, as you can see, the topic at hand is the downside of breathing. This is one of those topics that I don't really hear talked about a lot, but I want to talk about it. And I could probably talk for 3 hours. But the good news is I am not going to talk for 3 hours. We're going to limit it to 20 minutes. So we're just going to hit on some of the main items as it relates to breathing, because that's one of the things that has to take place when you swim. Obviously, this sport happens for the most part with your face in the water, but you need to remove your face from the water to get oxygen. So we want to talk about what is the downside of breathing. Obviously, the upside of breathing is that you get to live, and that's a good thing. Okay, so a really big upside. The downside to breathing is that for the most part, breathing slows you down. Yep, it slows you down, but it's a necessary evil. You got to do it. So the question is, how do you do it, and how do you do it well? Now, you have to breathe when you're swimming all of your strokes. You have to breathe when you are on your turn for the most part, or somewhere around your turn. You have to breathe, or at least manage your breathing around your finish. So we're going to dive into some of these areas. And if you have any specific questions about some breathing issues that you may have, just write us. You can contact us at our website, iswim1to1.com. All right? So here we go. Let's talk about the downside of breathing. These are areas of your swimming, this list right here, that are impacted by breathing. In fact, these are areas where breathing is pretty much a negative, okay? But yet, again, we still have to make sure that we breathe. We just have to do it correctly, and we have to do it efficiently so that it doesn't slow us down too much. Now, by the way, if you've ever watched any very high-level elite swimming, the Olympics, for example, if you see the 50 freestyle, that's one length of the 50-meter pool. Most of the time, those guys and those girls are not breathing at all for the entire 50 meters. At all. Why aren't they doing that? It would be a lot more comfortable if they were breathing, But they're not doing it because it only takes them about 21, 22, 23 seconds to get across the pool. And they can hold their breath for that long. But anything longer than that, you pretty much have to work in some breathing. So let's talk about it. First thing that breathing will, the first aspect of your swimming that breathing can negatively affect is your body line. Okay, you might have seen this before. Here to help me is my friend and yours, Coach Bob. He's gonna play a big role tonight. Bob, stand on this side. Bob doesn't really stand, but he's going to hang out on this side. So what happens oftentimes in breathing is that your body line, in other words, we want to cut through the water efficiently, right? The body line gets affected by breathing. I would say especially in freestyle. So here's what you see very often, okay? Bob is swimming down the pool. What happens? He turns for the breath, and often when people turn for the breath, they reach to the side. They reach their head to the side. Well, guess what happens? If you reach your head to the side, your body is going to follow because the head is the steering wheel of the body. Right, Bob? Yeah, okay, so wherever the head goes, the body is going to follow. So if the head goes offline, the body's going to go offline. And then the head comes back, and then the head goes this way. So your body line is significantly impacted by breathing. Because if you go on a crooked path versus a straight path, it's going to take longer. Therefore, breathing slows you down if you don't stay on line. So you got to be careful when it comes to breathing. Body position, that's a second area where your breathing can let you down. So, here's my example, of course, Bob and Bob's spine, which is my handy-dandy foam roller. Okay, so what happens oftentimes, let's just say in butterfly, what happens to body position? Well, often what happens is if someone breathes too high in butterfly, okay, what happens when the face goes up, the hips drop down. And when the hips drop down, you drag through the water. There's more resistance and you slow down, okay? Or let's say you, in freestyle, you lift your head for the breath instead of staying nice and low for the breath. What happens? The hips drop, lots of resistance, no good. So that's another area where your breathing can slow you down. So we got body line, we have body position. What about rhythm? Okay? Rhythm. Often what will happen is someone will take too long to take their breath. Right? So let's just say in freestyle, they're turning for their breath and they're one of these long breathers. They take a long breath. Okay? And what happens is your rhythm and your stroke will slow down if you keep your head to the side too long. Okay? So if you're swimming, you're going along, you're not breathing, everything's very even, you take a long breath, and then you mess up your rhythm. You get back into the rhythm, and it messes up again. And guess what happens? You lose momentum. You slow down. Not good. So, breathing impacts the rhythm. It also impacts your tempo. Okay? Tempo is like the rate of speed at which your arms cycle. Okay? So again, if you turn for your breath and you take too long, your tempo will slow down because your arms are going to have to wait until your face turns back into the water for the breath. So that's going to slow down your tempo or your stroke rate. That's typically going to slow you down. So, as you can see so far, breathing is a major bummer. But you got to do it or else you die. We don't want that. So, now what about the catch? This is a big one. Now, here's what happens. Let's take butterfly for example. We're going to talk some more specifics on the next page. But here's what happens in butterfly. If you are swimming butterfly and you land here in front, right? Land here in the 11 position, and if you look up really early, you lift your goggles up before it's time to go for your breath. What happens to your catch? The angle that you're pulling the water. Well, what happens is when you lift up, you tend to push down toward the bottom, and therefore you go up instead of forward. We don't want to go up. We want to go forward. But if we're pushing down toward the bottom, we're not going to go forward. So we need to keep the head in line with the spine and drive forward for the breath with the top of the head so that the catch stays so that you have integrity in the catch. So you're pressing water back toward your hips instead of down toward the bottom. Press water back toward your hips, you're going to go forward. Press water down toward the bottom, you're going to go up. We don't want to go up, we want to go forward, so you got to push back instead of down, and there you have it. That's the catch. We're going to talk about freestyle in a minute on the catch as well. What about turns? Now, turns is where normally the top priority when you're a little kid, when you're just learning how to swim, when you get to the wall, your top priority is oxygen. But the difficult part about swimming is we have to make oxygen very, very low in terms of the priority scale. Okay? Oxygen is low priority when it comes to turns, when it comes to overall swimming, when it comes to finishes. It's got to be low priority. It's necessary, but low priority. So when you come into a turn, if you touch with two hands, what happens most of the time? People will grab the wall, push up for this huge breath, and if you go up, you are slowing your race down. You're adding time, because your goal when you touch the wall to do a turn is to go back the other way as quickly as you can. But if you touch and go up for your oxygen, you're slowing down. Oxygen is your lowest priority. So we've got to make sure we keep the top priority at the top, which is changing directions. And then think of oxygen as a bonus. It's like, hey, nice job on your turn. Here's a little oxygen. That's really how you have to think of it. Low priority, it's a bonus. It's not the main event, okay? So, momentum. How many of you have seen a butterfly race or a freestyle race where a swimmer will push off the wall, they'll do their dolphin kicks, and they come up and they take this huge breath, very first stroke, or in butterfly, or very like their first breath in freestyle. Unless you are a very, very elite athlete with incredible self-control, most of the time, if you take a breath on your first stroke after a turn, you're losing momentum. Momentum is so important because remember, when you push off the wall, you have a tremendous amount of momentum. And that's why we want to have a good streamline, that's why we want to have good dolphin kicks, and that's why we've got to take as much momentum with us onto the surface once we get up to the surface. Well, if you take this huge breath when you arrive at the surface, you lose tons of momentum. And then you have to restart your momentum. You have to try extra hard. I mean, just think about it. If you can get a running start. Have you ever done a slip and slide? You know, ever done a slip and slide when you were a kid and you run across, you've got all this momentum and you slide and you hit that slip and slide and boy, you are just flying. But eventually you slow down. Well, once you get to a stop, it's pretty hard to get going again down that slip and slide. You know, you can wiggle, you can start to crawl, but you know what? It's really hard to restart your momentum. And the same thing is true after a turn. So we'll talk about that more in a minute. And then finally, finishes. I can't tell you how many times I've seen someone come into a finish and they take it, okay, so they're 1 second away from finishing the race. 1 second, maybe 2 seconds. And they take this gigantic breath into the finish. That is all about comfort, okay? It's not being dialed into your race. You gotta hold your breath in butterfly and freestyle into your finish, at least from the flags into the wall. Because if you take that breath, you're just slowing yourself down into one of the most important parts of your race. And guess what? Within the next 1 to 2 seconds, you're gonna have all of the oxygen you could ever want. Can you put off oxygen for just 1 more second? Just maybe 2 more seconds? So that you can get the cut that you want? So that you can beat that person next to you? So that you can qualify for the meet or get your lifetime best time? Absolutely. It just takes discipline. It just takes habits. And that's why you got to do these things in practice. You've got to control your air management, your oxygen management during practice. Because if you don't, then you'll get to a meet and it'll show up. Okay, you'll breathe off the turn, you'll breathe into the finish. You'll take a sky-high breath in freestyle. No good. Okay? So, we've got all of these pitfalls. These are all areas where breathing These are areas where breathing impacts you negatively. So let's take just a few more minutes here. And I want to talk to you just about three main areas. Three main areas where I see most of the breathing problems and things that you can do to make sure that breathing becomes less of a problem, that it's not such a liability, okay? We want it to be more of an asset than a liability. Most of the time it's a liability. All right, so freestyle, number one. In freestyle, most of the errors in breathing in freestyle come from either breathing really high, looking up at the ceiling, or lifting the head up out of the body line, okay? So most of the time it's either looking up at the ceiling or it's this. And what happens when you lift your head, the rest of the body drops, and then you get out of alignment, and we don't want to do that. We want to stay in line as we're taking a breath. So I just want to give you a couple of ideas here, some things that help me and help the swimmers that I coach take a more efficient breath in freestyle. Number one, I spy breathing. Many of you may be familiar with this. When you take a breath, you want this goggle to stay underwater while this goggle is above water. So you can kind of play I spy. When you take a breath in freestyle, you should be able to see the person in the lane next to you underwater with this goggle that's still in the water. We call it I spy. If you take a freestyle breath and you cannot see the person underwater next to you, or you can't see into the lane next to you, you're breathing too high, okay? So you need to work on I spy breathing. What's the downside of that? You might gulp in a bunch of water while you're learning how to do it. Believe me, you will learn how to become more and more efficient with that I spy breathing. The reason why you can do that, even with this goggle in the water, is because as your head is driving through the water, it's creating a channel through the water. You're actually moving water out of the way. So it creates this little gully, this little channel that you can actually grab oxygen in instead of having to lift way up for your breath. Okay? So, I spy breathing, really important. The other thing is, remember that you want to keep your head driving through the breath. This is kind of something to think about while you're breathing. Think about the top of your head driving through the breath instead of having to lift for a breath. You can think of your kick or your pull as something that's driving your head forward through the breath. When you think about taking a breath, think about taking a breath, not taking a break. Okay, we don't want to take a break, lift up, breathe, and then put the head back down. Just a quick I spy breath, and then turn the face right back in. In fact, one of the ways that you can really increase your tempo and your rhythm is making sure that once you grab that breath, turn your face right back in quickly. In freestyle, when you turn for the breath, you're going to rotate your body slightly for the breath. After you grab that breath, turn your face right back in. Why? Because if you turn to the side and you stay to the side, okay, your body is going to start bending. Okay, you're going to kind of be starting to drop because your hips are going to drop and you're reaching up for a breath, and it just gets really ugly really fast. The other reason why you want to turn your face back into the water quickly is for your catch. Because the longer you keep your face to the side, okay, and you start to move this arm, it's going to push down toward the bottom of the pool. It's not going to curve over that imaginary beach ball to get a really good catch. We want to grab the breath, turn the face back in order to get a real powerful catch. It's just really awkward when your face is to the side to get a good catch. But when your face is here, not awkward at all. So grab that quick breath. So I spy breath, really quick, with the the goggle underwater, looking into the next lane. Think about driving the top of your head. Drive the top of your head through the breath with your kick and with your pull. The top of your head, not your forehead. Not here. Top of the head. Carving a channel down the pool for the rest of your body to flow through. And then make sure that when you take your breath, once you get your breath, quickly turn the face back in. So you keep good body line and a good catch. Now, one of the things we're going to talk about on another day is, you want to make sure that you exhale your breath before you turn for your inhale. That's one of the main reasons that people take a long breath to the side. They hold their breath until they turn their face to the side, and then they have to blow out all their air and take in new air. It takes too long. So, again, we'll talk about this a little bit more on another day, but for right now, think about exhaling your air right before you turn for the breath. Okay? So, when you turn for the breath, you're ready to inhale. You don't have to do 2 steps of exhaling and inhaling, just 1 step. Okay? Just inhaling. Okay. Let's talk about the next area, which is butterfly. Okay? Butterfly, main thing, this is pretty simple here, but butterfly, there's 2 main things that happen. Number 1, people will lift up too high for the breath, and what happens, they get in this angle, their body angle becomes like this instead of like this. And we want to drive forward. Okay? We want to drive forward for the breath, and just a slight angle in the body. So, that's why when you take a breath in when you take a breath in butterfly, you want to keep your goggles angled down. Just drive forward with the top of your head instead of looking up and going up for your breath. Again, that will help your catch and it will help your body position. So drive forward with the top of your head, goggles angled down. There will be space between your mouth and the water. You'll be able to get air. You don't have to do this to get air, okay? That's going to help, again, your body line and your catch. The other thing that happens in butterfly, it's kind of the opposite of breathing too early or breathing too high. It's breathing too late, okay? When people breathe too late, what happens is they end up lifting for the breath with their upper back muscles. Well, what happens then if you lift up with your back muscles, you drive your hips low. And we don't want low hips in butterfly because that leads to lots of resistance. So, the best idea in butterfly is to drive forward for your breath with the top of your head. Not lifting early, not lifting late. Once you've already pulled, you want to engage start going for your catch as you're starting to pull. As you're starting to pull, angle your body up slightly to grab the oxygen, and then head right back down into the water. Okay? So that's butterfly. And number 3 is turns. On your turns, the number 1 thing to remember on your turns is, let's just talk about 2 types of turns. When you touch with 2 hands, short axis turns. The number 1 thing to remember is, don't go for the breath right away. Get your breath at the last second. Touch the wall, drive your knees toward the wall, and then you're going to dip and slip underwater. Get your oxygen at the last second as you're going under instead of at the first opportunity. That way, you'll keep the top priority changing directions. That's your top priority. So touch, change directions, breathe, instead of touch, breathe, because then you're throwing off your race. You're taking too long because you're going up for your breath instead of back under, okay? So that's the number 1 thing on the 2-hand touch turns, the short axis turns. Make sure it's touch, drive the knees, get your breath as you're going underwater. And then the final type of turn, I would say, is the number 1 error when it comes to turns, freestyle flip turns, is breathing the first stroke after your turn. You gotta hold your breath. Unless you're a very elite, high-level athlete, Olympian, even most of them hold their breath on the first stroke after the turn, okay? Because if you don't, if you rise to the surface and at your first opportunity you lift for the breath, you will most likely you'll angle up instead of driving forward. But if you hold your breath, you'll drive forward and you'll have more momentum to take into your 25. Again, your next length of the pool. So again, it's just a matter of holding your breath for maybe half a second longer, okay? So when you come up, you're in your streamline. Instead of coming up and taking that breath, come up, take a stroke, and then take your breath. It makes a world of difference in terms of the amount of momentum that you can take into your next length of the pool, okay? All right, so that's freestyle, butterfly, turns. There are a myriad of other areas where breathing comes in, but I just want to summarize by saying this. The number one thing to remember is oxygen is necessary, but it's low priority. Whether you're swimming freestyle, whether you're swimming butterfly, whether you're doing turns, you want to make it almost a non-event. You want to make it so sneaky and quick and low priority, because again, it slows you down in so many ways, but you gotta have it. So be sneaky about it, be quick about it, be efficient about it. You can go back over these items that we went over. You can email us if you want some more information about other ideas, but most importantly, ask your coach. Swimmers, ask your coach, how am I doing on my breathing? My butterfly breathing, my freestyle breathing, my breathing around my turns. Do it correctly during practice, and you will do it correctly at the meets. Do it incorrectly at practice, most likely you'll do it incorrectly at the meets, and that could cost you. Remember, it's only a matter of hundredths of a second between you and your lifetime best time, or beating that person you always want to beat, or making a qualifying time for a meet that you want to make it to. So it matters. Do it in practice, it'll show up in the meets. Okay, so that's it. The downside of breathing is it slows you down. But the upside is not only does it keep you alive, but if you do it efficiently, you can do it really fast, and it will minimize any kind of slowing down in your swimming. Okay, hope you guys have a great week. Keep focused on your goals, keep jumping those hurdles, and if you have any questions, be sure to let us know. All right, guys, have a great week. See ya.